Sideline Stories Episode 6 features Kayla Burton. Kayla grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, played basketball at Lehigh University, and is now a sports reporter and college basketball commentator. Let's dive into her legendary family story. Welcome back to another episode of Sideline Stories. This is episode number 6, and we are joined by Kayla Burton, who is a sports reporter out of Western Massachusetts. Kayla, how are you doing today?
I am hanging in, Brendan. Thank you for having me. You're crushing it with this, and I really enjoy I'm honored to be on this. So excited, doing well, hanging in, just getting through the hot summer days, but no complaints here.
Awesome. And Kayla comes from the legendary Burton family, which we will get into in a little bit. And I know
legendary
Kayla...
is a high... No, we're not legendary, but
Stand humble. And Kayla, I know you're usually the one doing the interviewing as a sports reporter, as a news reporter. So at the end of the episode, you'll have to give me a grade how I'm doing on this side of things. But let's get into it. Let's get into it right away. All right, first question, which I ask all my guests, is who was your favorite athlete growing up?
That's a great question. I would say favorite athlete growing up, Allen Iverson. I just love, and people are going to dog me out because they think he's overrated. I heard this, argument time after time, but being a little point guard myself at the time, I always looked up to him.
What was your favorite sports memory growing up? So I know you probably played on a lot of teams, dabbled in different sports. If you had to just choose one, what was your favorite sports memory growing up?
That is such a hard question. You're right. But the one that sticks with me the most, my senior year, and Brendan, you may have been at this game, I don't know, South versus Newton South, my high school, versus Newton North. We got killed by them in the regular season, and then we killed by 30, and we had no business beating them. And it was for states. We played at North, and I just got into this zone, but it wasn't just me. Like, the whole team just locked in. The crowd was nuts, and I was, out of all of us in the family, the crybaby. I'm always the most emotional one. So if I missed a layup, I'd be hard on myself or whatever. But I remember that game, it was just neck and neck. I mean, we were going back and forth the whole game. And I missed a layup towards the end of it that sent it into overtime. If I hit that layup, it would have been done. And mind you, I had 20 whatever plus points. I was having a good game, but that layup at the end killed me. And I remember getting on that bench, and you could almost feel the tears starting to pour down. Mm-hmm. And my dad always tells me this. I don't remember this distinctly, but I looked at Sam Donor, who's my coach, and I just locked it in and said, let's go. And we won it in overtime. It was just the best feeling. But that game sticks with me because when my dad would tell me, Kayla, you saw those tears going, but you locked it in. That was a good life lesson for me, because there are times where even nowadays, you kind of miss that layup, or you're just going through that period of life where you're discouraged, or you should have done something, you didn't meet that expectation. Mm-hmm. But okay, you still have overtime, lock it in. So that's a metaphor for how that game, sits with me. The other game was when I played against my sister at Lehigh. I played for Lehigh women's basketball. My older sister played for Villanova at the time. And we played in a non-conference game. They won, I know. We say they won, but I had the better game. We try to even it out that way, but it was a really cool moment as well for my family.
What's been your favorite moment as a sports reporter so far?
Ooh, that's tough. I know what was, a lot of people may know this. AJ Quetta, the Bishop Fien ice hockey player, obviously That's not a favorite story that he went down. And if you don't know, he's in high school, and he suffered a spinal cord injury in the Western Mass area. So we were all over it. We were covering it. But I think just to see, and I still till this day, I just saw the video of him graduating, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's, it's a very serious injury. But to see the not only Western Mass, but overall community, I went to a golf tournament recently where the Red Sox, Bruins, Patriots all came together. It was so neat to just see how Boston just rallies together for, a 16, 17, a teenager who really suffered a bad injury. Mm-hmm. And so I think just being able to be a voice for people And, people are always like, oh, Kayla, thank you for covering, thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing that. It's not me. I'm a voice for people, but it's funny. I thank them because it's like, you guys are the ones, you're the story. This is why we get to do it. But the one memory I have to say, UMass, the men's ice hockey team winning the national title for the first time, that was solid, because I remember I was out of work and I got called in, and we just go, well, listen, we're going to take a camera and we're just going to go. We're going to figure it out. Usually you have people in your ear talking to you, queuing you up. It was so old school, and it was the most fun time. Like, it was the best experience because they won. They came home with the trophies. That was definitely one for the books.
Back to what you were saying before, the power of storytelling. It doesn't have to be through sports, but the power of sports is also something that we both have a passion for it. People are out here thanking you and saying, like, thank you for all you do. And you're turning it right back around and saying, like, thank you to people like AJ and people who have gone through so much adversity, but have still rallied, and the support in the Boston sports community. I just think all that is super important, and it's inspirational.
And Brendan, you bring up, if I can just add to what you're saying here.
No, for sure.
My granddad, Ron Burton, he played, he was the first ever Boston Patriots draft. So he was selected obviously by the Boston Patriots, #1 draft pick. And I remember, back in that time, discrimination was crazy. Like he had to stay in a separate hotel versus all the white players. But one thing that he always echoed down to my family was, and my dad told me this story, he was actually, they asked him to come down to New Orleans and say, will you come and stay with us? But the only thing is, you have to stay in a separate hotel. You can't stay with everyone else because you're Black. And he goes, is there a wall? Or are there 4 walls? Is there a roof over my ceiling? Is there a roof over my head? A bed, and they were like, yeah. And he's like, I'll come. Because people ask him, or he passed away a long time ago, but people asked him, like, why did that's bold, like, you could have easily complained, this is ridiculous. I'm a great football player. You guys have me in a separate hotel. I'm not going. And one thing that he echoed down to my dad, which echoed down to me, was sports brings people together. And so whether you're reporting on it, whether you're doing what you're doing, whether you're playing the sport, like, people think, I remember even when coming out to Western Mass News, and it's not just Western Mass News, a lot of different stations have reasons why they don't want to really focus on sports because there's so much news to cover. But how I view it is, sports is the one thing right now, especially, that really keeps people together. Like, you don't see, when you're watching a game, black, white, orange, purple, whatever you are, political views, you're either team Boston or team Philly. Like, it's so fun. And whether it be high school kids that I get to cover out here, like, seeing how these guys and girls are getting through a pandemic and getting recruited and getting Gatorade Player of the Year and all of this, when they've only had 5 regular season games or whatever the situation, how to get dressed outside in the parking lot because COVID, you're not allowed to use the locker rooms. Seeing these guys overcome these obstacles is like, it's unbelievable. And how do that's what makes me love what I do, because it's not just about calling highlights and this and that. There's so many stories, within the sports industry. So I'm getting way, off on a tangent here, but it's a passion of why I love doing what I'm doing. And it started, for me, at least generationally, with my granddad.
Pivoting off of that, why is it important to advocate for and push for women in sports? Because you've now been on all sides of the ball, is how I see it. You were a former D1 player. You've been a coach in the past. You're an analyst for Yale men's and women's basketball. When we're thinking about, we're at this kind of moment, we're at almost this crossroads, it seems like, where there's this push for women's sport and there's a little bit of a pushback. I think that the push is kind of outweighing any pushback at this time, but why is it so important, and where do you see women in sports in the fight for equality?
You bring up such a great point. I love seeing the different number of people from all different platforms. You see the NBA players advocating for women in sports, the Russell Wilsons, the people in the NFL. Like, it's not just NBA, it's people from all different platforms advocating for the WNBA, but also for women in sports in general, tennis, swimming, anything. And it's been a long time, overlooked, 100%, still is. But to see, I was able to see it tangibly because my sister went to the Team USA where the tryouts, where there was a huge lack of at least the equality from the treatment that the men got for those tryouts versus the women. The women put it on blast. They said, look at if you remember the weight room comparison.
Yep, I remember that.
Our little dumbbell section, and then look at the men's. And what was so neat about that is to see how not only are the women taking a stance saying, what's up? Like we may not have the physicality. I mean, think about it. Men and women, we're born differently. That's just natural. I don't care what people say. That's just natural. But the treatment that's where we got to pay attention to, and to see, you know, even just in my own household, to see my sister, like she doesn't just put this stuff on social media. We're having conversations at the dinner table, like over the phone. And she's like, I just don't, like, she's so appreciative of what she's getting. Don't get me twisted. But at the same time, she's also saying like, I'm seeing this firsthand and it's unacceptable, but let's do something about it. And
definitely.
The youth, honestly, like I'm about to be 26 years old. Even my younger sister, who's about to turn 21, her generation, it's like mind blowing with how empowering they are, but they need help too. And that's when, like I said, the Russell Wilsons, the LeBron James, the Steph Curry, like all these different people are stepping up. And now guess what? When you turn on that television, you're seeing more marketing, you're seeing more advertising. And there was such a lack of that. How do you expect people to watch the WNBA when you don't see commercials for it? You know, I honestly didn't watch much of the WNBA at all. And my sister's hopefully about to play in it. So I better start watching it. But to see seeing the advertisement and the marketing, there's still a lot to, you know, there's still more to go, I should say. But I believe we're in the right direction. And for me, it's a passion. Women in sports, especially being of color, you don't see much of that either. You know, you don't see many people with the type of hair I have or whatever. And that's important for me because you know, I feel like the people of color community, the young teenagers or whoever, they're not, at least for a long time, they haven't been drawn to, I want to be a broadcaster, because they don't see people like them in that role. So how can you expect them to be? So just trying to pave that way, you know, I have a long way to go, but just trying to be the best that I can be and to help those younger women of color, whether it be in sports, news, whatever, and not just me, seeing all different people, you know, come together to advocate for that is really neat.
Thank you so much. If there's anything else you'd like to add, or maybe where people can follow you at, now would be a great time. And yeah.
Well, follow you. Thank you. I appreciate you for all that you're doing. I mean, you're such a vessel, and you're incredible to put people, you know, on this platform. So it's interesting to get to see it from my side. Like, oh, now I know how people, you know, feel when they get interviewed. It's humbling.
Exactly.
But Brendan, thank you for this. You're awesome. I'm excited for you. You're killing it in what you're already doing. And you're very authentic, and I love that. So I appreciate you, appreciate this. I'm on social media. Obviously I talk. So you're going to see post, but KB2 is Instagram. Don't make fun of this, because my boyfriend at the time in 8th grade gave me a rapper named K Breezy. So that stuck. He didn't, but that stuck. So Twitter is
That's fly.
Twitter is like K_Breezy22 on Twitter, and whatever. You know, I appreciate all that you're doing, and you know, good luck to you as well, because I know you're already soaring. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla.